you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I think that's the key.
All righty, so I want to welcome everybody. This is our next version of the Anarchapulco 24/7, 365 communities interviews. And today we've got another two wonderful, awesome anarchist voluntarists, Terry Brock and Luis Fernando Mises. And so let's start with Terry. Terry, you want to introduce yourself and tell us all about who you are and what makes you tick?
What makes me tick? Well, I love liberty. I love freedom and believe in living life to the fullest and abundantly. I'm a communicator. I write and I speak. I was training of an undergrad degree was radio, TV, newspaper, a journalist, and writing for different places all my life. And I've been in radio, worked in that right after undergrad school, and enjoyed it. And now doing a lot of podcasting, doing different things. Most recently, I was just asked by Ace Hardware to be their chief retail advisor for all of their international dealers that are out there, not in the United States, but everyone outside the United States. So we did that project and went really well, had a great time doing it. And I like the idea of taking what we're doing as voluntarists, people who believe in living peacefully and creating a better world and communicating that to others. That's kind of who I am.
Absolutely. Thanks, Terry. Luis?
Well, first of all, I love how he introduced himself. He's always so good and eloquent. I like to empower people. That's part of my purpose and mission to help people grow and actualize their full potential. So that's how I spend my time. Thank you for having me here today, sir.
Absolutely. And Luis, you're really the spur of this interview is something you posted on Facebook not too long ago. And, it was, I'll just read it. It's point of awareness. Become aware of the load you are carrying. Are you carrying it because you have to or because you want to? And I think it's such a fundamental question that most people have a hard time asking themselves and really coming to grips with how important that is. But where did that come from?
Well, it's kind of funny. I was on my way to a party with my wife, and it's been, a long day. We got to go to a festival, and I was selling kratom, and I was carrying my gun in my leg, like leg holster. And it's like 1 a.m. I'm exhausted. I'm like, gosh, this gun's heavy. Why am I carrying it? Because I want to keep people safe. But wait a minute, am I doing it because, am I feeling burnt out? I can just leave it home. I don't have to do this shit. Wait, you're bringing it because you want to. You don't, nobody's asking you to do anything, So anyway, that's kind of what precipitated everything. And I went into a deep rabbit trail. I got meditative as I'm shopping at Kroger at fucking 1 a.m. And my wife's in another aisle and I'm here carrying the basket with stuff, just thinking about all these things. I'm like, whoa, I had like an ayahuasca moment right there. And I can share more later, but so I was like, oh, okay, that's a great awareness piece. Oh my God, I need to share with people. And I think that's one of the things I like to do. I like to share where I'm going and what's happening to be able to help others. It's not like my healing does not have to be just for me. Because I know that there's a lot of people that are going through stuff and even it may not be the exact same thing. If I extract the essence of it and give it away, people will benefit from it because ultimately it's the spirit walking through and calling for awareness and consciousness. Eckhart Tolle said once that, there's sporadic moments of freedom that are given by the universe at any given time. So you have to make use of them and then expand them. So, I kind of do that and then just pass them forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's some wise man said, you learn by teaching and you heal by healing.
I like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I really got something out of that. And it's really something that with my pursuit of what I'm calling ethical emergence, and trying to get people to really realize what their purpose is in life, and then create the habits that get them there. But like asking that question, what we have to do, and then thinking about the things in terms of long-term thinking. I think so many people have been conditioned with the short-term version of, what things mean, and there's also the long-term thing. And I think actually, Terry, you're in Detroit. Dale Brown, I just interviewed him recently, and he's talking about how peaceful outcomes in like violent or potentially violent situations are really the great outcome that we want to aim towards, because everybody ends up better off, even the criminal. And that's just a version of long-term thinking, really, because if they look at the situation, they're thinking about kind of the short-term circumstances. But if they look at the long-term, regardless if it's the criminal or it's the victim or it's the community, there's long-term implications to every one of these situations that we come to, and it's really applying long-term thinking to something like this. Terry, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm going to see Dale tomorrow, matter of fact. He'll be coming to a meeting that Gina and I are putting together and with a bunch of friends talking about living life and looking at the long term. And I think that peaceful living, as someone who calls himself whatever term it's going to be, something like an ANCAP or a voluntarist, libertarian, a freedom lover, I don't get hung up on the labels. I don't even like to use those labels. I think what we're doing, though, is we're figuring out a way to peacefully make the world better, to do anything you want that's peaceful. And that means you never harm another person by initiating force. Now, you do defend yourself. And Liz, I commend you on your exercising not only the rights they have within the law of this piece of dirt called the United States, but it's a moral right for you to defend yourself, your family, and others. And you do that, and you do that responsibly and peacefully. And we are better off in an environment where you are there armed, and if a bad guy comes along, we know just leaning down and going, please, 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 don't shoot me, is not going to stop them. But someone that can say, hey, we're going to take care of ourselves and we're going to live life peacefully, I think it's important. But I think on the other hand also, we want to do what we can to increase prosperity, where we can increase abundance. That means we find ways that we can add value to others. By adding value, you do very well. Matter of fact, it was a buddy of mine and a Dallas Texan resident, Louis, right there with you, named Zig Ziglar, who said it very well. And he said, you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I think that's the key. That's really a matter of we go out and we assume we have got to work. The world doesn't owe us anything. We've got to create value. We have to look at where they have a need, where they need help. And then we figure out creatively how we can do that and in a monetary sense, make that worthwhile for all parties concerned. For them, that they say it's worth paying for that. For us to say, well, it's worth my efforts to do this, put in the time, money, and energy in order to get a better return on that. And so I think that's part of living life practically, pragmatically, as William James would tell us about, that we make sure that we're doing what we can to make the world a better place by looking at how we can alleviate pain and hurt that others have.
Yeah, well, it's it seems like so many people find that they're busy these days, and I don't know that many people are actually doing things that are really, fundamentally good for them. In many cases, they're making decisions about how they use their time in a way that's really more of being appealing to kind of the pleasurable distractions than actually doing things that are really fundamentally, better for them. And so I don't know. How do you guys, as far as when you're talking and dealing with people and trying to schedule time for them or trying to get things done, do you find that a great deal of people are having a hard time managing their time in a way that's most productive for themselves?
Louis, I'll let you go first on that.
Thank you. Well, I think that has, as you were saying that, my brain went on 20 different directions, but I think one of them, the first one that comes is, I'm actually surprised when people don't do that kind of stuff. When people actually focus on the future, because it seems like it's, because we are like super present right here, right now. This is what's being seen. So I am spending my time, the most profitable way being I'm eating pizza or I'm playing video games, right? Because that's what's bringing joy. So I think that the main issue is it's people sometimes don't know delayed gratification. And that idea of delayed gratification is actually what brings prosperity into the world, because you're actually, it's like you're betting for the future that's going to be better than the present is. So that's a really I guess entrepreneurial mindset, and that's what helped us go from just hunter-gatherers that we just had what to eat at that moment to having sellers and saving and thinking about what am I going to leave my kids behind, or legacy, like thinking long term, and then it spreads out into history. So again, like the default mode of thinking is just the present and nothing else. And then when you start helping people see that maybe, all that money that you're spending on beer could be like spent on your kids' schooling supplies, or maybe if you need a new car or new tires or something like that, instead of just right now, right here.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think that's really important, that what we do is we focus on what's going to be better for us long term. We have to have the right goals for that and be willing to put forth the time, money, and energy to make it happen. Reminds me, a while back, I was a member of the National Speakers Association, get to know a lot of different people. I was speaking up in Wisconsin, and I found out we were going to be at a restaurant called that was attributed to football for the Lombardi, Vince Lombardi, and the whole atmosphere of that. And I thought, wait a minute, I know Vince Lombardi Jr. kind of through NSA. He was a member at that time. And I thought about giving him a call, and I thought, he probably wouldn't want to talk to me. Well, maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. And I just thought, just do it, Terry. So I picked up the phone, called him, and he answered it. And I said, "Oh, hi, this is Terry Brock calling from Orlando." And he goes, "Well, Terry, how you doing today?" And I thought, well, that's great. And I said, "Well, I want you to just leave a few words. I'm going to be talking to the Wisconsin bankers. Could you just say something to them to say hello?" And he said, "Sure, I'll be happy to do that." And what he said really stuck with me, because he said, when people think of my father, they often think of winning isn't the only thing, it's everything. But when I think of my father, I think of what he said, that if you want to have goals achieved, if you want to get what you need in life, you must be willing to pay the price. And most people aren't. Most people, to go back to an athletic example, they don't want to put in those extra laps. They don't want to put in those extra push-ups. And they think, oh, gee, do I have to do this? To go back to, Louis, what you were talking about before, it's not a matter of you have to, you get to. And if you change your mind to that, you're going to do much better. And so that saying from Vince Lombardi, you've got to be willing to pay the price. It takes time, money, and energy to get that done. And we've got to be willing to do it. Richard Marcinko talked about that a lot in the pioneering work that he did with the Navy SEALs. He was one of the people that founded SEAL Team 6. And he talks about being willing to pay the price. And another thing he said, there's an ancient wisdom that I think is so true. The more that you sweat in training, the less you'll bleed in battle. The Russians have a saying similar to that, where they say, tough in training, easy in battle. And very similar to that. So we've got to be willing to say, okay, I'm willing to get out there and do it right. Now, that doesn't mean you kill yourself. You don't know. We're not talking about injury here. We're not talking about harming yourself. We're talking about being willing to put in the time, the money, and the energy to get a return. I think too many people want to take the lazy way out. Just say, well, I just want it because I need it. Yeah, here's the key. Oh, I need it really bad, therefore you owe it to me. But a principle that applies strongly in voluntary living and being a freedom lover, liberty lover, is your needs do not constitute a demand on my resources. And so we have to say, yeah, we want to help. And now we believe in charity. We want to help out people when we can and where we do it. But someone sitting back going, you owe it to me because fill in the blank of, I am this, or my ancestors were that, or I'm this, or whatever. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't work that way in the real world, in the animal kingdom. And what matters is you provide value to them. And if you can give them value, then you'll be able to get back what you want, like Zig Ziglar told us. And I think that really is the key to it. And Mike, you have demonstrated this in your life and the work that you have done and the real positive economic value you've created for others. And now you are able to enjoy that, and you're continuing to do that as well. I compliment you, Mike.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate that. I was just going to point out that when I was probably in my early 20s, I had got out of the Army and, started my first job. But when I got out of the Army, I was a bit of a heavy drinker. And so I would go out practically every night and party it up. And finally, I got to the point that I decided, that's probably not a great idea. And so I had been reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and one of the things that it instructed was to write down your goals, create a 1-year plan, create a 5-year plan, and I created a 5-year plan, which was to buy a house. And subsequently, when I stopped drinking, about 6 months later, I had enough money to buy a house.
How about that? There's a correlation there, huh?
Exactly, and I think that's a problem that a lot of people have, is like all these kind of distractions and kind of addictive behavior that's being perpetuated in our society, and especially with like social media and stuff. People are distracted by things that give them immediate pleasure. I don't know. What do you think about where the young people are going in regard to social media and stuff, and their ability to focus long term?
I think it does really depend on the kind of parenting that they get, because I think that a lot of people blame young kids, blame the generation, but forget who raised those people that they're complaining about. Because kids don't grow themselves,
Good point.
You have to really look at the problem deeper. So I think that, as always, the main problem on anything is lack of presence. When we are not present with our kids in this specific subject, they're going to just grow up kind of like floundering around, just doing what kids do, which is becoming self-centered and focusing on the right here, right now, and having emotional bursts. So, that's what you see. And I was just a few days ago, I was watching the convention of socialist America or something. And like all those guys were just about, needs and point of privilege, please don't use any, and like, that kind of stuff, just bunch of snowflakes. And I'm like, that's not how the world works. Like Terry was saying, you have to be able to provide value, to create value. It's like when you go gardening, right? You plant the seeds for things to grow. And what you get out of that seed is 15,000 times what you put into it, because it's only a baby seed. But you have to put the seed in first before you can get anything out of it. And you have to water it, and you have to make sure that there's no bugs eating it. So that, extrapolating that to life in general, like you have to put the sweat equity into things. And even, like, who was it? Robert Kiyosaki. One of the last rules from the book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is the law of reciprocity. And his dad was saying, if you want to get something, you have to give it away first. And what does that mean? If I want love, I need to love. If I want money, I need to give money. If I want work, I need to give work. So it's kind of like a boomerang. Whatever you throw out comes back at you. So I think that idea of like, so what are the kids going to be? Well, it depends what kind of engagement of parenting they'll get.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Louis. I'm going to piggyback on that. And right now, where I am, I'm in Detroit here for some meetings and heading over to area just a little west of here where I grew up, where I was born and raised, and attending high school reunion. And we grew up in farm country, even though we were not on a farm ourselves. But I've written a book about relationship marketing and how it's very much like farming. I say it's much like relationship farming. You've got to take time. You nurture the soil. You study it to find out, first of all, is the soil right for what you want to do? Here in Michigan, we don't grow a lot of oranges. Okay, doesn't do it work very well. However, down in Florida where I live, we grow a lot of oranges, but not as much of the other kinds of crops they have here. You got to study that soil, but then you also got to study the market. What is the market looking for? You might be an expert in tsetse flies from Ethiopia of the 15th century. Well, that's real dandy, Sparky, but there's not a big market demand for that. And we don't care how much you tried and how many courses you took on that in school and how big your debt is. We really don't care at all. What we do care about is, can you meet the need that I have? This is the way the world works. And farming is like that. You got to till the soil. You got to keep away those varmints that would try to come and eat your crops after a while. And the bugs and the other critters that are running around there. The weather, hey, all of that there. The wind, all this stuff, and the rain can really tear it down. But then you get to harvest. When you finally get to harvest, you got to work like crazy then and get it. But then you always take the corn first that's the best. And that goes back into you're recycling for next time. That's your seed corn. So always keep investing in your mind and today to learn what does the market want now, not what worked before, back in the good old days. Let me tell you what it was like, whenever those were, for whoever it is. That's real nice. That's good. A little pat on the head. Okay, wonderful, nice. But we can also learn principles there. But what we want to do is focus on what do people need right now? What can I do? What can I learn? What skills can I acquire that people will value and say, "Oh, you can do that? Oh, we need some of that. How much would you charge for that?" And you charge them a fair and reasonable price, and they go, "Really? Okay, well, come on over. We'll pay you this amount of money, preferably in cryptocurrency, and we'll pay you this amount of money, and we'll make sure that you are taken care of." And I think that's the key. And if we fail and go away from those principles that are really important, that work, we're going to suffer in life. I can climb the mountain and go, it's fair for me to be able to fly. I should be able to fly. I should be able to do this. Well, you can should all over yourself if you want, but it's not going to change it. I mean, you've got to get out there and you've got to align yourself with nature and the way things work and provide value first. Louis, like you said so well, I remember talking about Zig Ziglar. I remember his rallies. He would go, some people wouldn't even know what this is today, but he would bring a pump onto one of those hand pumps that you use, and he would say, I can go jump up and down all I want on this. He'd make a noise. He was having fun with it. And he says, but it doesn't do anything. But you know what we got to do first? And of course, back then, people would say, you got to prime the pump. You had to pour water into it first, and then more water would start coming out. And today, the principle works, even if we don't use that kind of technology much at all. But it's still important. You've got to prime the pump. You've got to train your brain, train your body to find those needs that people have, and then find a way to help them. And as you help them, then you will get what you want, as Zig told us again.
Extremely good points there, Terry. Thanks so much. But getting back to kind of the idea between have to and want to, what a question for both of you. What do you think is the percentage of what people do on a daily basis because they have to do it versus the percentage that they want to do it? Because one of the things that, I think anarchist and voluntarist and freedom-loving people they want to do, and they want the future to reflect what they want and the principles and philosophies they want. And so we've got to get better at getting what we want. And so how do we, so again, what's the percentage of what people are doing that are haves versus wants? And then how do we increase that to wants versus haves?
I think it really depends on the person, and it's I'll tell you, when we got married, I was 21 years old, and I mean, I've always had 2, 3, 4 jobs at a time, and you know, I was doing stuff that I didn't necessarily like. At some point, I was scrubbing toilets at Starbucks for like whatever dollars an hour. And, you know, you have to, um, if you don't have a lot of skills, if you don't have a lot of connections, networking, knowledge, and all of that, you have to start at some point somewhere and just grow and rise up the hierarchy. And a lot of people say, well, the hierarchy is evil because they make you start there. And it's like, no, because when I was 20, I did not know what I know now at 36. And I did not know how to create value like I do now, although I've always been a hard worker. So the percentage, I think, that is directly proportional to how much you've learned, how much you've put yourself out there. So at first in life, it's going to be really sucky. I mean, whenever we first moved to Texas, I was working at Scott's Lawn Service. It was Monday through Saturday, 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. outside in the heat in the summer of Texas, 115 degrees. So if you can imagine that, that's like a ton of hours under the sun. And I mean, I was dead at the end of the day, right? But that got us our first apartment. You know, when I saw the first big fat at the time, like fat, I was like, oh my gosh, I almost cried. I was like, I had never been paid that much. And then I went and showed it to my wife, and then we put the deposit for the apartment, and we were all thrilled, right? I mean, we didn't have any furniture, but at least we had an apartment now. So fast forward, you know, 15 years, now I get to do a whole lot more of what I want and less of what I don't want. But ultimately, there's always shit that you have to do that you don't like, you know, like for instance, my brain preference is towards, you know, like right brain stuff, you know, conceptual, future, process, all of that. And if you put me doing notes and paperwork and all of that, like I struggle, but you have to do that too, right? I mean, I think it's a good balance to do sometimes those things so you also don't get just spoiled by the other side. But so then that's my experience on how it goes. And I see it in people, like they want to become CEOs right out of college. And number one, the job of a CEO is hard. So it's harder than, you know, whatever low entry, whatever, right? And especially the experience and all of that. So you have to earn your keep, if you will.
Absolutely. Those of you, by the way, Mike, if I can mention something to those that are watching this, get to know this man that you just heard from there. Both of these guys, I know them and have seen them one-on-one and in public. They've got a lot of wisdom. Fernando has a lot of ideas that are incredibly good. Follow what he's doing. And Mike's got, as you know, many good ideas. And I find, Luis, I'm going to have to agree with you again, because it's a matter of us getting out there and working hard and being very relevant. I just had an experience, Mike, I think I was sharing with you a little while ago, just a couple of weeks ago. I was asked to go speak in Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia. First time I'd ever been there. It was a big conference being held by a man named Carlos Slim. Carlos Slim happens to be pretty well known in Mexico. I think he owns Mexico, or at least the cell phone there and the petroleum and all that. He asked me to come down and be the opening speaker for a big conference that was going on. And I was going to do that. And by the way, the person that closed the conference was a guy that I did not know before named Ivan Duque. Ivan Duque happens to be the current president of Colombia. And so I was opening and Ivan Duque closing, and I got a chance to see two other past presidents, get to talk with them a little bit from Colombia. And the thing that struck me so much, Carlos Slim was there. He's 79 years old. He's got $63.4 billion. Okay. The man's got more than a couple coins to rub together. He's doing all right. But he was there taking notes, listening, learning. When I was giving my presentation, he sat on the front row, taking notes feverishly on my program and taking pictures of my slides. And I thought, how cool is that? And then when we finished, he said, I got the things packed up. And Luis, you know what this is like, because you speaking like I do. You're packing up your materials, your laptop, and everything start to go away. And people were saying hello to me. And then as I was getting ready to leave, he looks over at me, and Carlos Slim says, Terry, could you come over here for a moment? We can talk. I thought, yeah, I think we can work something out on that. Wow. So I went over, we sat down and talked for like 30 minutes about all kinds of things related to social media. He's got a very inquisitive mind, asking all the time. And then what really blew me away is here's this man, 79 years old, and his mind is sharp like a steel trap. He keeps providing value. When the conference was over, after like a 2-3 day conference, he gave a presentation himself for an hour and a half, where he went back over all the speakers, talking about what they said, giving economic and philosophy and ideas that were really just nothing short of brilliant. And as a professional speaker, I'm watching him going, damn, this guy is good. He's got all these notes that he was talking about. When he finishes, he gets done. He comes off the stage. People are all around him, everything. And he makes a beeline straight over to me. I was on the front row on the other side. And he's holding me up and going, look, Terry, look what I've got. And he showed me his notes, handwritten notes, 20-some pages. Then he started speaking very rapidly in Spanish. And I said, no comprende, senor. And he goes, oh, sorry, Terry. I went back in English. But it was like he was showing me what he had done. And it hit me. No matter how old you get, you can still stay relevant.